I think it's not about us versus them sort of thing, but it's how we complement it and how do we bring our individual strengths, So that's what one way I always look at it is like, it's not a competition, it's really about complementing. My perspective and how I come from an Asian perspective would definitely add value. My seniority would add value.
Yes.
Being a female is going to add value. So I don't go in with this competitive mode, it's always, people sense it if you're in a competitive mode. If you're fighting for feminine causes and you're in a very competitive sort of thing, people sense your energy. But how...
Welcome back to Heart Dialogue, where we connect hearts through meaningful dialogue. I'm your host, Candy Yap, and beside me today, I have a very, very powerful woman here, Dr. Nisha. Dr. Nisha, thank you for making time here.
Thank you so much. Yeah, my pleasure.
It's my honor. Dr. Nisha, why did I mention, Dr. Nisha is very amazing? Okay, let me share with you all, because Dr. Nisha has been in tourism for the past 25 years. Yep.
After 25, stop counting. It's longer than that.
You definitely look way younger.
Thank you.
And Dr. Nisha got a title, Most Inspiring Woman in Travel Asia 2024.
Yeah.
This actually caught my eye. And Dr. Nisha, before I ask more questions, because when I start, I couldn't stop. So maybe Dr. Nisha, could you just intro yourself, a little bit more about yourself, to the audience?
Sure. I come from the travel and tourism industry. I've been there for, like I said, more than about coming to 30 years now. My journey started off, I'm very passionate about tourism, but along the way, our industry, though, is a really interesting industry. It's got one really big problem, is that of women's empowerment and development. We, especially in Singapore, we are about 50 to 60% of our tourism workforce is female. However, as you look at it further up into the trajectory from the entry level to the top, right at the top, you may find only about 15 to 20% are women. So I was really curious, like what was going on?
Wow.
Why is it that there was a lack of women at the top? The more I started doing research and finding out more, I realized that less than 10% of the tourism ministers are women too. So there's something really happening. And then when I got a little bit more curious, I saw that countries like Maldives, which is predominantly tourism driven. Only less than 10% of the entire tourism workforce is women, is 90% is men. I just came back from Sri Lanka. Again, Sri Lanka has got a really thriving tourism industry. Again, another 10% only women. In Pakistan, that I just came back from, they told me it's about 2 to 3% only women of the entire tourism workforce. So as you may guess, you probably are very curious now, what is going on? The disparity between the more developed countries and the less developed countries. Why is it that less women? So that kind of like motivated me to start World Women Tourism, right? And in that, we look really at the development of women, the empowerment of women, policy making in the tourism industry. How can the women's trajectory be better at a higher level? How can policies be more conducive for women in our industry, which is not really favorable for women? That's one of the biggest reasons why women don't come into this industry. So that kind of like is my passion. I'm an advocate now for women's development and empowerment, particularly in the tourism and hospitality industry, where there's a lot of work to be done.
Wow. Okay, let's pause for a moment. Like a lot of information to be digested. Okay. So Dr. Nisha, if I may bring back a little bit of the time frame. When did you started to realize, hey, there's a disparity between the gender in this tourism?
Okay. So it's a very interesting question that you asked, because it actually began just before COVID. The idea was proposed to me by two men not women actually.
Wow, 2 men.
Yeah, so there was, when I was at UNWTO speaking about a issue in tourism, there was one gentleman, from India. He looked at me and he says, Nisha, you look like an advocate. You can actually speak about very important issue. And this is an issue in our tourism and hospitality industry. I've got a name for a company called World Women Tourism. Would you want to be spearheading it? And then a Canadian gentleman, Trevor, also said, yes, I would like to be part of it.
Wow.
So we want you to front it and we would be your male allies,
Oh.
So it was born by two men actually. And then I got my supporting partners, one is from Australia and the other one is now in Malaysia. Then we got World Women Tourism going. So, and we thought, maybe we do training and leadership kind of program for women in our industry. But as I was digging further, the issue was a lot more complicated than just running leadership program.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay. So speaking about male initiate a woman empowering event.
Yes.
It's even more empowering,
yes,
right?
Absolutely.
So, after deep dive into the problem, if I may ask, what could be the top reason of this whole problem,
as to why women are not in the tourism industry and hospitality.
Yes.
There are several reasons. It could be structural reasons. There are culture-sensitive reasons as well. Our industry is not very conducive for women for many reasons. One, like it is frontline, and certain cultures are not receptive, like Maldives is a Muslim destination, the Middle Eastern countries also. In Sri Lanka is a very predominantly Buddhist also. So religious factor, culture factors. There's a lot of sexual harassment in our industry too. We don't really speak very much about it, but it's reported. There's lots of research on sexual harassment. A lot of the harassment is kind of like under the umbrella of being service oriented. We've also got late hours, very late hours that we work. We work sometimes 24 hours, sometimes in the events industry, in the hotel industry, we got shift work. And therefore, the outlook, when people's perspective to this industry is kind of biased.
Yes.
Especially people who don't know what's going on. And of course, it's very difficult to balance, especially women who are married, between family, your other roles, and the demands of our industry, which is very emotionally, I would say, emotional labor is heightened in our industry more than other industries. Yeah.
Is there any, during your research, Dr. Nisha, is there any unforgettable case study or any stories that that you have came about while you were doing all this research?
Come across in our industry?
Yes, for example, the sexual harassment. Could you describe more about this?
Yeah, I would say, when I was growing up, the awareness that the younger generation here now have of what is sexual harassment or what is something that is allowed and not allowed and what can be tolerated and not tolerated. I don't think I had that kind of awareness when I was growing up in this industry.
Yes.
So I was in sales and marketing. And when you're in sales and marketing, you know that, everything is parked under service.
Yes.
So you wouldn't know when customers come and give you a hug or make discriminating, or sometimes unconscious biasness when they speak about, or you ladies are like that, or would you be able to meet me, after office hours? That sort of behavior, right? We didn't think of it as something that cannot be tolerated. We should stand up for it, be assertive.
Yes.
We didn't know things like that at that time. We thought that was okay, right?
Yes.
But it's not okay, isn't it? It's not okay. So I think now my job is to make the younger ones understand, even through mentorship, in terms of being assertive as well, that when is it that they should stand up in our industry and say no to certain forms of harassment. Need not be just sexual harassment. It could be unconscious biasness that's in our industry. The idea of imposter syndrome that women have, that creates problems in visibility.
Yes.
Right. So if you ask why is it that there is less women at the top, it's because women choose, sometimes self-select to be invisible. Right. So again, I have to make it conscious to women in our industry that you need not do that.
Yes.
Because it can be a double-edged sword in that sense that, or it's a double bind, we call it. You want to play it low, but at the same time, it affects your promotional opportunities. It would affect your visibility in terms of your achievements. So the more I allow them to understand this or enable them to understand it, I find that more women become, I would say, more visible, right? They are willing to take the chance.
Yes.
So we need role models, we need mentors, we need coaches, we need sponsors in our industry. So I guess my network is for that. It's a very targeted objective based on what are the gaps in our industry at the moment.
So what are that you mentioned about a mentoring program? So what will be covered in the program?
So two-pronged strategy that I undertake. I personally mentor, right? But I also conduct mentoring workshops, coaching. I'm a professional coach as well. So when we run women's mentoring workshop or coaching, what we really look at, like I just came back, I came after preparing materials for a company's mentoring workshop. So it's really about getting people to understand why it's so important that you become mentors, take that initiative to become mentors. What does it entail when you do mentorship? It's not about your ego here. It's about thinking of having a vested interest in the development of fellow women in your organization or in your network. How do you make it very systematic? Many of the mentorship programs fail because it is not systematic.
Yes.
Right? So we teach them the systematic approach towards what really is mentoring. How do you do it? How do you take a mentee from stage A to stage B and stage C to a point where they are empowered to take on the role of a mentor after that?
So what's the goal of this mentoring program? Like, what would be the goal for this?
The primary goal for me is how to elevate the trajectory of women, right? How do you get them from a role where they are achievers, they can achieve, and how do you get them to be empowered to take accountability?
Yes.
Right. And I think this year's International Women's Day is about that. Right?
Yeah.
So how do you I think that's what mentoring is. It's not about just hand-holding, but it's about how to get the mentee to be empowered, that they become accountable and responsible for their own journey.
Or even like how to get the mentee to open up about their problem.
Yes.
Right.
Yes. So I think traditionally it has always been more male-to-male mentoring, but today's organization is beginning to look at the role of males, they have to empower women-to-women empowerment. And we're also talking about, I speak a lot about reverse mentoring, where you get women to empower men so that you have a more feminine approach to leadership as well. It also empowers women when they mentor men. And for men to understand the perspective of women and come up with policies which are female, conducive for female employees in the organization too, right? So I think reverse mentoring today is trending, and it's something that I introduce in my mentoring program.
Wow. So I'm just curious to know about this reverse mentoring shape, female mentoring male. What kind of challenge have you been facing?
Mindset. Right. Very often, the first thing I would say is mindset. It's a new concept. So the males got to be open to the fact that they are being mentored by females, that the mentoring process can be very different because the way females communicate is very different from how a male would communicate. So the unconscious biasness got to be parked or addressed. So mindset, and even for the female to feel the confidence to say that, I am empowered enough to mentor a male, in an organization.
Inferior of themselves as well.
That's correct. Yeah. And how many women are willing to be visible and take that accountability or take that challenge of mentoring males in an organization? That's really something real. Academically or theoretically, it may sound fine, is okay. In the Western world, you see more opportunities maybe, but when you talk about, I work a lot with Asian women. Most of my leadership programs are are kind of oriented towards Asian women, right? So
Yes.
it's not something that comes naturally,
Yes.
to our cultures. So it's something that we've got to speak more about, and we've got to find spaces, safe spaces where this can happen.
Yes. I absolutely agree, because if looking from finance perspective, we do have coaches, and most of the coaches are male than female.
That's right.
Probably because female, we speak more emotionally, and male are more logical.
Again, I think it's an unconscious bias.
Yeah.
I don't think whether we are, yes, I think emotional intelligence is important. I don't know whether we are emotional, but I think we are emotionally intelligent.
Yes, we are.
Right? And I think there is a lot of pluses for being emotionally intelligent too.
Yes.
So I wouldn't say that we are emotional in that sense, but I think we're emotionally and intelligent, positive intelligence too can be higher in women too, right?
I would say the right words should be that we are higher in emotional intelligence. Yes. So like during the mentorship, like what would you be focusing on, while you try to empower women in leadership or even in coaching?
Yeah, I think mentorship can be in various dimensions, like one-to-one to group dimension. So it is really about, like I mentioned to you, it's about, for me, the focus of mentorship is really to create accountability for women to take the responsibility, for their own personal journeys and professional journeys, So I focus on the mentors to enable them to do that. It's not about, you have all this expertise and experience and how do you transfer that. But when I do my mentoring, I would always focus on the mentor's ability to develop the mentees to take their own personal responsibilities, their accountability. How do you facilitate that sort of confidence, self-esteem, build up their emotional intelligence too? And your positive intelligence as well.
Yes.
So how do you do that? That's more important than just handing over your expertise and experience, because that can be an ego ride. To say that, no, I've been there for so long. Now is my time to tell you what to do. But it's not a telling process, actually. It's a developing process. It's an empowering process. You are a guide.
Yes.
So I take a different kind of a look at mentoring, I would say.
Wow. So Dr. Nisha, your role in overall this mentoring program is to make sure that this mentor being empowered, and then they can empower the mentee.
That's right. So I have seen, I think in my journeys, I have seen really young ladies, going through the process of self-awareness, taking charge of themselves, and now I have seen many of these younger ladies are leading organizations, they are networking, they are mentoring other people. I think that's a very, very interesting, I would say it evolves to a point that it becomes something natural.
Yes.
So I think that is where I get a lot of my fulfillment from when I watch that happen, right? Yeah.
So what's the youngest age of woman that's in the mentoring program? Like the youngest age that?
I had one, I would say she was a girl at that time, but now she's a fine young woman. She's an academic. She was 22 when she came, and I think that's where a lot of consciousness begins to happen.
Where she came from?
She was from India, and she was almost at the verge of giving up her PhD, and she was very lost. And I think that the first thing that myself and another mentor, we did to her is give her self-confidence.
Yes.
I think that's what it's a start to anybody's empowerment journey, is to have that confidence and the eagerness, right? They must be very porous. I always say that you must be very porous, you must be very eager, you must be willing to learn, and to sponge as much as you can. So in her, I saw that, she was like a sponge, literally observing, literally willing to learn, wanting to to do everything that we did. And now it's quite amazing what the stuff that she's doing, and we collaborate and we work together. Yeah.
And I believe in India, there are much more young women deserve this kind of opportunity.
Yeah. I would say like in Asia, right? I would say in Asia, I have seen, I just got back from Pakistan, and I see very, very eager, learners over there, young women out there. They're experimenting with amazing things. I saw a young 22-year-old Moroccan girl, was all alone in Pakistan, and she's so eager to learn, and they're everywhere. It's whether we are willing to invest our time to look at the younger generation and say, okay, how do I empower this?
Yes. So who's funding for this? Who's funding for them for this whole mentoring program?
Some organizations do, right? So when we do coaching or we do mentoring one-to-one, some organization handpick the staff and said, okay, can you coach some of these younger women in our organization? For the mentoring program, organizations have got funds to do that, or some International Women's Day, when we speak about it, you have some people coming forward. Some of them we do it pro bono, that we know that the affordability is a problem, right? So we take them, but of course it will be a mutual win-win. That's how relationships evolve over time, right?
Yes.
Yeah. So
that's pretty amazing. So like you have been doing this since COVID until now. It's about like 6 to 7 years already.
That's right. I think COVID presented a downtime.
Yeah.
And I've always wanted to do this, and when COVID happened, most of my work got stopped. I think every crisis in my life gave me an opportunity. Every single time.
And it's always
there was SARS, there was 911 to the Asian financial crisis, to then came the mother of all, right? COVID. So that was a time that I stopped traveling. I stopped all my work, my consultancy work, and everything paused, and then I have a coach. I have a personal coach, and my coach asked me, so Nisha, what do you really want to do now?
Yeah.
And I said, I think it's something that I've really, really wanted. So we did a superpower journey where I went into self-reflection, journaling, and I said, okay, I think I've always wanted to do this, and now is the time for me to launch. And then he and I drew my short-term plan, mid-term plan, and I said, okay, what do I really want to do is work with women. I want to write a book on women.
Wow.
And I wanted to do a podcast, and I wanted to do an Asian women leadership program. I just wrote it down, and I think that manifestation, I would say, whatever I wrote down happened that very year itself.
Yeah. Like how do you wrote it? I'm just curious to know, like, how do you wrote it? Like, do you write it like, I want to be, or like you just simply write down your goal?
Yeah. So, I mean, that's again, the whole superpower powering me workshop, is something that is proprietary to my coach. And also I went through a group, and I went through a one-to-one where, I think we have to put it down as a manifest, as like, okay, this is my wish list. This is what I really want to do. And how do I want to manifest this? How do I see it to be, right? Like a book that I did, or was on extraordinary journeys of women, right? I did a collective of stories. So I just said, I want to write a book on women's struggles and how they have emerged as winners, right? So I just wrote it down, and I said, I don't know whether I can write a book on my own. And he says, no, just write it down. It will manifest on its own. Just write it down and how you want it. And I think the moment I write it down, I don't know how it happened, but I was part of Speakers Tribe, and I have tribe members who are a lot of women and men. And I said to one of them, would you like to write a book with me, on women's struggles? And he said, yeah, why just the two of us? Why don't we get other people who are interested? And the moment we put a call out for expression, we have 25 people, male and women, said, yeah, I want to write my story.
Wow.
So it was a collection
Yes.
of male and female, and then we wrote. So many of these things that I wrote on the Asian Women Leadership Program was also like that, where I felt that many of the leadership models were very Western-centric, very male-centric. So I said, I want to write a Asian Women Leadership Program for Asian women, and just when I kind of like verbalized it, I had two people who were coaches, friends of mine. They said, yeah, Nisha, we want to do it with you. Now is a downtime for us. Let's do it together. So we met a couple of times at their house. We drew the plan, we drew it. And before you know it, we had the program, Asian Women Leadership Program. We have got a website, and then we ran the first one immediately 3 months after we spoke about it. We had a group of 10 women all over Asia joining the program.
Wow.
Yeah.
Like just 3 of you, like done the website, all the planning.
The whole curriculum.
Wow.
Everything was done. So I think the intention must be there,
Yes.
So most of us, I think, sit down and say, oh, I wish I could do this. I wish I could do that. But the moment you put it down, I always say, write it down.
Yes.
The moment you write it down, that's the first intention that is on paper.
Yes.
Right. And then you begin to say, how do I want to do that? And the moment you start speaking about it, you will attract the right people, the right energies, I would say,
Yes.
and they would congregate towards you. And before you know it, so many of my initiatives now, women just come in. They just come and they said, oh, let me be part of it. How can I help? There's so much of enthusiasm. There's so much of energy out there. So many people who are willing to work together. So there's just, I would say, there's just so much out there.
Yes.
Actually. And if you really take an abundance mindset, you realize that just no scarcity for things like this. Yeah.
Yeah, that's so powerful. Like from what I hear, is not just about writing down or visualizing it. It's also about a call to action, like really just speak out your intention and start to attract the right energy. Like, because even if you write down and we didn't do anything, nothing's going to change.
No. But the moment you put your first step, there's always a fear, right? Because I've never written a book. I mean, I've done my thesis, but that's not like writing a book, right?
Yes.
So, but there's always a fear like, can I do it? We've all got imposter syndrome, no matter where we are in our journeys, we all have this like, can I do it? But you need to have a good relationship with people in your network, people who should always be pushing you. I've got. So who is in your circle is very important. The power, I believe in the power of proximity. Very, very important is the power of proximity. So I've got a really good friend. She's Catherine Koo. She's in Australia. And there's something that we've always tell ourselves is that every time we speak, we should be amazed at how the other person has grown every time we speak. So we could be speaking fortnightly, we could be speaking 2 months once, but we challenge ourselves that, the next time Catherine and I speak to you, you must be surprised at what I have been doing for the last 2 weeks. When you speak to me, I want to know that you have been doing amazing things the last 2 weeks.
That's the commitment.
Yeah, I mean, it's something like we need to have the fire in our belly, right? So I've heard, I follow Mind Valley a lot, and the owner of Mind Valley, Vision Lakiani, and it strikes me after 5 years. He always says that, when you meet your friends, you should grow to a point where they have to get to know you all over again the next time they meet you,
Yes.
So I think we have this personal mantra, few of us, that every time we meet each other, they have to get to know each other all over again. Like, okay, my God, have you been doing this much?
Done so many things within this.
Interesting thing. It is not be just in a professional capacity. Yeah. It can be in your own personal capacity, but you have to continue to grow.
Yes, I agree. Like this just remind me of how I started this podcast. Because when I started this, I just thought, okay, I want to do something that I want to give back to the society. I didn't know how am I going to do it or what should I do about. I just had some rough idea, and then I got invited by my friend to this studio. So I was a guest back then.
Oh, okay.
And I was like, so here's the place I should do.
Yeah.
And the universe got me here, right? Like without further ado, I just told my parents, say, I want to do this podcast. And I had my parents at home. We just record a dialogue.
Yeah.
Like unscripted as well.
Right.
And that was the first heart-to-heart dialogue. I didn't know I wanted to name this heart-to-heart dialogue. I thought interview or podcast.
Yes.
But after that session with me and my parents, I thought that, let's call it heart-to-heart dialogue.
Right.
It is really like the heart connects to another heart and we dialogue. We can feel it, the energy, right?
Yes. So it's very interesting you're saying this, because when I did my podcast, I've always been following, or if you can call stalking, some of the really interesting women in the world, across the world. Some of them are so amazing what they do that I always observe them, I watch, I listen to them, and I said, okay, these are the women I watch. What about getting the others to watch them? So I call it Women We Watch, right, in tourism. So when I said, okay, how do I start a podcast? I don't even know how to do a podcast. But that gave me that thrill, like, okay, I've never done a podcast. I've been on stages, but I've never done a podcast. So when I first recorded, and I think for you it's the same, when I record, it's like, geek, is that how my voice sounds?
I hate to even look at my face. I hate my voices and
exactly, because then you hear your fillers, although I conduct a lot of presentation skills, but podcast is a different thing. Your voice clarity is important. So you learn. So you go on courses on podcasts, you watch other people's podcasts. And then there's so much to learn in a podcast, how you title, who do you invite? How do you ensure that they speak? So the learning curve for me was huge, but I wanted women around the world, when they watch my podcast, to learn. But I think my learning curve was so steep.
I think the similarity between us, like we thrill when we learn something new and we get new challenges. To me, doing this podcast is extremely hard because I do have imposter syndrome even once a while right now, because I grew up in a Chinese education background. And I just told myself, okay, I'm going to challenge myself. I'm going to do this in English. And let's do this, get better and better.
Yes.
And it's just like Dr. Nisha mentioned earlier on, no matter at where we are right now in our life, the imposter syndrome.
Oh yeah, it happens.
It's always there. And it's just like we get down sometimes and we get up and then get down again. And it's always needing a fix.
Yes, it does. But how do you channel that into energy positively, right? That's important. Like, I would say that for me, in terms of gender, right, women has always been seen to be more like a minority, right? Feeble and whatever the biasness are. But that has always been like a challenge, for you to stand up in your community. Like, I grew up from a conservative community, right? And minority. So Indians are minority. I was an Indian Muslim, right? And that's a minority. Religious biasness are there, and that's always creates insecurity. Like, are you doing the right thing? It creates a lot of imposter syndrome. Like, can I make it in a majority, kind of, in a population where the majority is not how I am, when I go into international stages, in academia too, right? Predominantly white. And then there you are in Asian. So you're always facing a situation where insecurities will crop up. People will make you feel insecure, believe me when I say that. When they see your talents and strength, and sometimes it does happen, and very often it's women who do it to you. It's not always necessarily males who do that, So how do you use that to challenge? So for me, I've always seen like, why can't I? Why do I have to play small? So even as a tourism consultant, where most of the time the consultancy businesses are taken by people from the Western part of the world, how they speak and how they put up. They have a long history in which tourism has been there, and they are consultants. But I always view that, well, I have my 30 years of experience, right? And why can't I? So don't play small, use your knowledge, use your experience, use your network, use your eagerness to learn, right? And I think that the question that you need to have is like, why do I want to play small here, right? How do I beat that, so that I can also do what they do, So I think that's something that has always helped me. So your insecurities and your weaknesses should actually be a challenge, that you use to push yourself out there.
Wow. Our insecurity or weaknesses should be the challenge.
Yeah, say
put
that should be your
ourselves up.
motivation. Yes. Yeah, it will always be there. I mean,
Yes.
it never ends. Even now, I would say it doesn't end.
Yes.
It will never end because you will continue. Age would be a factor very soon, right? So it starts with you being too young. Then it will end up with you being too old.
Yes.
Right? When does it end? It will never end if you are
Yes.
going to look for a reason to say, I may not be able to do it or I can't do it.
Yes.
But the factors will continue to remain. And
Yes.
Yeah.
Because even in finance industry, like sometimes when I meet with business owner, because most of the business owner, they are male, right?
Yeah.
So it's just like Dr. Nisha mentioned about the unconscious biasness is there.
Yes.
Yeah, it's just there. And like sometimes I will ask myself as well, like, why it can't be me, right?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, if people could do it, I can do it. Like, I'm professional as well. It's just, because it's not just because I'm a female and I can't do it. Like, I can carry that as well, and I know what I'm doing.
Yes, and I think it's not about us versus them sort of thing, but it's how we complement it and how do we bring our individual strengths, So that's what one way I always look at it is like, it's not a competition, it's really about complementing. My perspective and how I come from an Asian perspective would definitely add value. My seniority would add value.
Yes.
Being a female is going to add value. So I don't go in with this competitive mode, it's always, people sense it if you're in a competitive mode. If you're fighting for feminine causes and you're in a very competitive sort of thing, people sense your energy. But how do you really embrace it, and think of it as a much wider perspective to all this? It's like, how do we use our resources to complement and add value to whatever initiative that we are doing, right? And then people feel that that you're more open.
Yes.
And you invite people into your space, right?
Yes,
and they invite you into their space, but in a competitive mode, it's not going to happen.
Yes. Yeah, I love it. Yes, it's about embracing the differences between.
Yeah. So, I mean, a lot of us see that, in terms of scarcity mindset, instead of letting a male do it, let me go in and do it. But there's always a competition if that is going to happen, right? But if it's like really complemented, let's open up more seats, for more of us to be there.
Yes.
Right. And so what if it's, there should be equity. There should be equity, but maybe sometimes I say not equality, but there should be equity.
Yes.
But we are given the similar advantages, to be able to complement.
Yes. And let's talk about the woman we watch. This is something which I'm quite interesting to know about. Like, Dr. Nisha, could you just share a little bit more about the Woman We Watch podcast? What is it about?
Yeah. So again, it started during the COVID when I was less busy. There were lots of women out there in the tourism industry who were making strides, who were breaking glass ceilings. They were doing amazing work, really. So I wanted to find out, what made them do what they do. Like in Sri Lanka, there was a lady who was in a male-dominated society, in a family-run travel business, but she was heading the hospitality wing, and she was doing beautiful and wonderful and amazing things. In fact, some of the people I met on my podcast, when I travel, I make sure I meet them, so I wanted to hear, in a family-owned business, right? How did she get a seat at the table, So instead of being a CFO, Chief Financial Officer, or CEO, very often they put you in a seat of Chief Empathy Officer or something, But no, she is as strong as her brother. She is really very powerful, So I wanted to let the audience hear, even in a family-owned business, right? What are the problems you face and how do you have to put yourself at the seat, and I had another lady who is a Singaporean in Dubai, and she does private dining, and how she broke into the space of predominantly male chefs.
Wow.
Right. And she does private dining in the space of her own home. And she's making a big mark because she's got the kings and all coming to the house.
Wow.
And yeah, so I met her at the expo in Dubai, Singapore's pavilion. And she was there and she was talking about food and Singapore's food. And I met her and I'm like, oh my God, the Singaporeans in another country making big waves, you know, and let the whole world hear about not just male chefs, but a female, but in her own home, in private dining.
Yes.
And it gives hope to people. Say, why can't I be the same, right?
How do you get to know all these people and how do
so
you
a lot of it
invite
is
them?
LinkedIn.
LinkedIn.
A lot of it is LinkedIn, you know. So I had another lady, she's a Filipino, but went into the US as a lawyer. And then she went to Mexico. And then she now fights for trekkers, mountain tour guides who are females, and predominantly of these females are victims of sex trafficking.
Yes.
Right? And she is now giving a voice because female trekkers are abused in many ways, emotional, physical abuse, financially abused.
Yes.
They're not given proper accommodation or wages, and their little bodies sometimes. So she fights for them because she was an advocate, right? She took her strength as an advocate to now be a brown girl trekker. You know, she treks. She went to Mongolia and she started to bring English-speaking tourists there to teach the Mongolian entrepreneurs on how to run in English, teach English and to run hospitality. And eagle hunters, there are eagle hunters in Mongolia, and she taught them to put their stories on social media using English. There's a lot of empowerment work that she was doing. So these are the people who are up in the mountains, out somewhere in the world, you know, but I wanted to give them a voice. You know, there was a Canadian lady who was actually going to India and training female tour guides in a country where female tour guides are not encouraged.
Wow.
And the kind of work that she was doing, you know, for them to get to be out there, you know, for their interests, right? So 25 women I interviewed, and then I did it because I was passionate, not to make a living out of podcasts. You know, we don't make a living out of it.
Like what I'm doing right now as well. Like
it's very, very tiring, you know, because you write the script, you write the stories, you write the questions, you got to meet them, you got to enable time to talk to them. So many things, you know what it is like. Then because after the COVID, especially last year, my work got really, really busy, and then I did a lot of women-related policy work and so forth. So I put that on my shelf for a bit. I thought, okay, that's my contribution. I did. I gave 25 women voices to speak to the world. And a lot of people heard. And many of these women are now my friends. They are my business partners. In fact, many of them might be business partners at the moment. And we collaborate on a lot of work, actually.
Wow.
Yeah.
This is so
I would
inspiring.
say 50% of the women on my podcast are now my business partners.
Wow, this is so inspiring.
Yeah.
Maybe this podcast is a calling from the universe to sort of hinting Dr.
It's
Nisha
how
come
you
back.
leverage it, you know. We can just leave it be a podcast if you want to.
Yeah.
But if you want to leverage,
Yes.
all right, it's really, really up to us what we want to do after this. This is just an introduction. This is just the beginning. There's so many things that can happen out of this, right?
For the audiences who are as curious as me, who want to listen to Women We Watch podcast, where can we find the podcast?
It's on Spotify, it's on Google, it's on Apple, so you can find it on any major platform at the moment. I kept it live,
All right.
you know, although I have stopped for the last 1 year. Maybe, I don't know, I've been wanting to write a book on all these women and their leadership models, but haven't found the time. And if I have somebody who say, okay, let me take charge of that, you know, and you just tell me how we should go. I wouldn't mind working with somebody.
Now that Dr. Nisha has, you know, voiced out. So any audience who, you know, passionate in doing this, feel free to reach out to her. I will definitely check out your podcast because it sounded very, very interesting.
It's very interesting.
And yeah, I mean, like, I was actually wanted to ask, after all this, all the contribution, the woman empowering work that you have done, what would be your next 10 years goals, Dr. Nisha?
Very good question. I'm always writing my 10-year goals. So every now and then, I stop and check. I say, okay, where am I going next? It will, after a while, plateau. I say, okay, I've done what I want to do. At this moment, it's more policy work. So I've done a lot of work on the ground. I would continue to do so. I'll continue to work one-to-one in groups at corporate organization, but I really want to do policy-related work. So I've had conversations recently with countries like the Maldives, which is really interested to write their national policy with respect to how to get more women into their workforce. As I mentioned, less than 10% are in the workforce. So what would the policy look like, at a national level? What can be done as a strategy? How could that influence organization and the industry? So I'm really keen. Started having conversation, and recently I was in Sri Lanka too. They're also very keen to speak about it and what can be done at the national level to correct what is happening at the moment, and how do you empower and get more women coming in. So that's the national level. In Bhutan, I wrote their 10-year plan, master plan for tourism, just finished it. Again, the main component and one of the very important component in there is about how do you get community-based tourism, but empower women to run this community-based tourism. So I want to work at that level.
Yes.
I think there's a lot to be done at the macro level and shift policies, shift government thoughts regarding this. So I think that's my calling for the next 5 to 10 years. Yes.
How do you, I know there's no balance in between personal and your professional work, but Dr. Nisha.
Well, there is balance.
Okay, how do you balance? Like, what's your secret to balance?
There better be a balance. Otherwise, you'll run out of steam,
Yeah.
Maybe, the problem is for most of us who enjoy our professional life, we get carried away.
Yes.
Right? So somebody yesterday was saying, you look so happy, but very preoccupied. So I said, sometimes when you love your work too much, right, it becomes your life.
Yes.
So people, are you tired? Like you travel here, travel there, you touch down, you're up again, you live out of your suitcase. I said, I don't find physical tiredness. I don't, because I'm energized all the time, and however, I make it a point, a very conscious decision that when I travel, I try to stop at a particular time, go for my spas, meet up with people, back in Singapore, and make sure that weekends I try not to touch work, more family time. I make sure I make 2 to 3 trips per annum, girlfriend getaways, family getaways with my cousins, my sister. So we do girlfriend getaways. It's a different kind of getaways. Then it comes my own family getaways. So yes, I make sure that happens 2 to 3 times. My own personal care is important. I do yoga every day. Meditation, mindfulness and breathing techniques, that is really, really important.
Yes.
I do my own personal development. I must grow. So I do a lot of courses. I make sure I take a break and do courses like in the evenings. I enroll in like Mind Valley programs, anything random, but I would like to learn. I'm a sponge. I'm an eager learner, so I put that as a priority. So yes, I think there must be a space for your personal life where you do what you enjoy most, and it should also give you that fine balance.
Yes.
Right? Yeah.
Am I right to say, like, just be intentional of how we utilizing our time? Like, if let's say now we intention to do work, we just fully focus on the work. If let's say now we say, hey, I want to have a break, and just fully focus on the break, not like in between. Sometimes we struggle when I rest, then we think about work.
Oh yeah.
And then we work, then we think about rest.
Yeah.
Yeah,
that's right. I think that will be a continuous struggle. You got to admit it, and to say that, no, that doesn't become a struggle, right? It doesn't quite happen.
Yes.
But I think there must always be a conscious decision to say that, I want to take me time. I am important. If I don't take care of myself, nobody else is going to. People will empathize with you. They will ask you, are you okay? Are you fine? Do you want to go for a walk? But if you don't give yourself me time and self-care, I think it's so critical. Then where do you get the fire? Where do you get the energy to give yourself the space for other people?
Absolutely.
Right? Yeah.
Yes. And Dr. Nisha, could you give the audience, perhaps some of the women who are listening, maybe they want to start something different in their life, or probably they are stuck in certain stages of their life. They wanted to do something, they want to have a breakthrough. Mm-hmm. Could you just maybe share 1 or 2 pieces of advice for them?
Okay. Well, I don't know whether it's advice, but I'll just share my experience. Okay.
Yeah, sure.
It starts with that. I always feel that go with your intuitive feel. I always go with an intuitive feel first, that what is it that the fire in your belly, what is it telling you? Be very in tune to that, and you need the time and space to do that, right? So when I said in my meditative mode or my quiet time, my walks, I look at what is that intuitive calling, right? And then after you realize that, okay, this is really what I do, then tell yourself, just do it. Do it. Don't wait for a better time. There's never a better time in your life. I can tell you, like I said, there's always family. There's always, when your kids are growing up, you spend all your time there. Then later on, when your kids are grown up, you got your parents who are getting older. Yes. When your parents are getting older, there's so many things always on your plate. There's never a better time. So don't always say that a time would come. It will never come. So I would say just do it, but don't just jump into it, but be more strategic. Put it down on paper, do your research. When you want to start something, like I say, power proximity. I was given a really good advice by my coach. It says, okay, Nisha, if you want to do something, when I talked to him about women, he says, then out of the 10 books you read, 8 must be centered around what you want to do.
Wow.
If there are 10 people you're meeting, because I'm always meeting people, right, and it gets overcrowded, right? They said, out of the 10, 8 must be centered around your goal.
Wow.
Right?
Yes.
Anything that you do, ask yourself, is that centered around what I want to do? You can give allowance of 2 to 3, which is not aligned, but just make sure that you are very focused, because otherwise your plate is always full.
Yes.
Right? I thought that was a very, very good advice.
Yes.
Between doing 10 other things today, why I'm here is because it's aligned to what I do. Right? Or otherwise I could be doing something else or meeting somebody else, Yes. But you got to prioritize things in your life, Otherwise you get carried away, and you always use the term, I have no time. And when people tell me I have no time, I said, it's not that you don't have time. You have no time management.
Yes.
You got to admit it, that you don't have time management. Yes. Everybody's got a 24 hours, and don't use that. It becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy when you keep saying that I have no time. And before you know it, your time will run out.
Yes, and it's just fair. Every one of us, we have 24 hours a day.
Yeah.
What I hear from Dr. Nisha is, number 1, just follow our intuition.
Yeah.
Number 2, just do it. But be focused on your goal.
Yes, be very focused on your goal.
Be very focused.
There's always distractions. We are always confronted with distractions.
Yes.
Distractions on our personal side, professional side, or other people's distractions. We carry other people's monkeys a lot.
Yes.
So that distraction always happens. But when you write it down and you say, this is my focus, and you keep looking at that and say, okay, if I have to meet somebody, is it aligned to my focus? If I am reading something, is that aligned to my focus? If I'm doing something, is it aligned to my focus, right?
Yes.
So once you start to do that, you realize that your time management, your urgency, your priority will all fall into place.
Yes.
And before you know it, you will be halfway through what you want to do.
Yeah.
Right.
And I'm gonna ask, because since we were mentioning about super focus and the goal alignment, I'm just wanna ask, Dr. Nisha, why do you decide to come to heart dialogue? Without knowing what I'm actually doing, because you thought that they will be scripted. And then I was saying, hey, this is unscripted. So.
Okay, why I came here.
Yes, correct.
Okay, I tell you why. When I heard, of course, it's got to do with women, right? Of course, that's always a calling. Like I said, it's aligned to my work.
Yes.
Right. So therefore, I think that it's always a contribution for me to make, to say something that would, out of 1,000 people, even if 10% listen and they feel inspired,
Yes.
I'll be quite happy with that. So that's the first reason. Second reason, because I've done my podcast, I know how hard it is to do what you do, right? I think I think that's important to support, you know, and that's not an easy job that you're doing. So well done. Continue doing that. So that's another reason why I'm here.
Thank you. So how do you feel about the podcast so far? Like, how do you feel about the podcast so far?
Today's podcast? Well, I think it's impromptu, you know, so I just spoke what's in my heart. So thank you for that. It's not scripted. I just feel that, you know, that's what I think this Heart to Heart is all about. We just speak from our heart and what I intuitively feel that I have to say today.
Yes.
You know, and if, like I said, 10% of the viewers get inspired, I'm really happy for what we have just done today. And it makes today meaningful.
Yes.
You know, and our presence and what we do very meaningful.
Yes. I have to be honest, like I was still feeling fearful, like, hey, what am I going to talk about is tourism, and I'm not that, you know, I don't know much about tourism.
Yeah.
But then I told myself, hey, just be at the moment and just be curious.
Yes.
And just try to put myself into your shoes.
Yes.
Yeah.
I think that's one thing I've learned, whether in the podcast or whether in networking or being in a screen, is that it's not about being interesting. It's about being interested.
Yes.
You know, the harder you try to be interesting, you get nervous. You feel that, how can we always be interesting? It's not, and you put a lot of pressure on yourself.
Yes.
You know, but when you're interested in what the other person is doing, what the other person is saying, then everything just flows. In networking, when I do a lot of networking courses, and this is one thing I always say to people, when you go into networking, don't feel frightened, you know, that I don't know what to say. Will I be interesting to somebody?
Oh, I love it. I love this, like being interested rather than being interesting.
Yes.
Yeah. Before we bounce off, I have one last question for Dr. Nisha. As a powerful woman and with all this achievement that you have achieved, if I may ask, how would you want to be remembered, you know, one day when you're no longer around? What's the legacy that you are trying to build?
How would I want to be remembered?
Yes.
That was what my story was about in the book. How do I want to be remembered? I always... you know, the starting point of my story when I wrote is, you know, it was a visual that somewhere I read, you know, it's like when you have all of us have a final day, right? When we die. And I've gone through very, very close death experiences, you know, and I've seen death actually, you know. So I think that was a wake-up call where you ask yourself, you know, if you're given one more day, right, have you lived in a meaningful manner?
Yes.
Right? So to me, I think that's my one important mantra for my life is that, have I lived meaningfully? You know, each of us have been given a presence in this world, right? I mean, it's a gift to be here. It's a gift to be in this world. Have you used this gift in a very, very meaningful way? Have you impacted? So I think to me, that is one way I would like to be remembered, is that, you know, she's a good person and she lived her life very meaningfully and like it was a gift. Yes.
That's beautiful. Thank you, Dr. Nisha. And thank you for the audience for listening. And
thank you.
We had another meaningful dialogue. Hopefully you guys will do your dialogue in your own ways on comfortability. Just be interested and stay curious. See you next time. Bye.
Bye.
Thank you, Dr. Nisha. Thank you for being part of this incredible dialogue. We hope this episode has inspired you to embrace heart-to-heart dialogue in your own life. If you love to share your stories with us, DM us, comment below, or use the hashtag HTHD stories. Your voice matters, and we can't wait to listen and learn from you. If you enjoyed today's conversation, don't forget to subscribe and share this episode with your friends. Remember, every genuine conversation has the power to make a difference. Let's make an impact together. Till next time.